Well, good morning and welcome everybody. Welcome to this Qlik webinar on measuring and visualizing operational equipment effectiveness. My name is Paul Stiles and with me today we have my colleague Ryan Biggs, and today we're going to go through and look at how Qlik can be applied to obviously helping this really important measure in the manufacturing process. The webinar will last anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes. If we do get to 11:30, just to make you aware that there is a minute silence at 11:30 for the 7/7 attacks, the 10-year anniversary, which we'll be observing. So we welcome you to join us in that as well. So let's get started and let's take a look at the agenda for this morning. So what we're going to go through is what is OEE, and this is really just to get a level set, so we have an understanding on what the measurement is and how we look to apply that measure to the process, the production process, and how Qlik can expose the components of that measure and obviously help in the context of improving it. Why is it important? And certainly why visualizing such an important measure like OEE is important. We'll look at the three sort of things that make that up around availability, performance and quality. And then Ryan will dive into a demonstration to show you a Qlik application and take you through almost a journey, a storyboard through, again, how we can measure OEE from a Qlik perspective. And then just a couple of slides at the end around Qlik as an organization and some of the areas in which we work in manufacturing. And then we'll open it up to Q&A and provide you with some additional resources. Okay, thanks, Ryan. So just starting off, and again, this is just more of an intro into Qlik. As an organization, obviously we are a BI vendor, dashboard and analytics vendor. And really where we focus, and as it says there, our one simple belief is that it is people that make decisions. And it's how we deliver information to individuals in a meaningful and contextual way as part of the business process, in context and in a format in which they can understand, so they can optimize the business decisions that they're trying to make and how those individuals are actually aligned to the business strategy. But more than that, it's creating an environment where people can collaborate and people can add sentiment to what is good, bad or indifferent data. So people really are at the center of our process. Obviously there's a lot of complexity around getting information from source systems through that sort of information supply chain. Okay, so and this really goes into what is the reality today, and this is no surprise, I don't think, to anybody that information, or certainly data, is exploding. We're seeing vast amounts of data being both created and certainly the amount of information that is actually usable. So if you think about the Internet of Things, whereby we have much more connectivity around our devices now, both from a personal perspective and certainly in organizations in which we work, and obviously from a manufacturing perspective, talking around production lines and using your MES systems, there's a lot more meaningful data that we could potentially connect to and expose. But information is just a source, or data is just a source. And going back to what I mentioned before, it is people that make these decisions and how we harness that sort of human intelligence to make sense of the data. Now, visualization is very much a sort of a buzzword at the moment, but visualization is only one piece of the puzzle. It starts way back around data acquisition. So how do we prepare and store data in a way which we can actually then present it in a visually appealing and appropriate manner? And then once we visualize that data, we need to go beyond that. We need to be able to apply that to different use cases, whether that's just simple reporting, whether that's more in-depth analytical applications where you can start to ask more value-based questions, what if hypotheses, doing compare contrast. Potentially predictive analytics as well comes into that. And then further on from that, how we surface that information, either embed that information into business processes and applications like custom applications or mashups, or purely deliver that on platforms like mobility and devices, which again are much more prevalent today. So this is the sort of market conditions that we're starting to see, and obviously this is how Qlik is aligned our strategy. So what is OEE? Essentially, as it says, it's overall equipment effectiveness. It's the measure used to indicate how effectively machines are running. OEE being the metric that identifies the percentage of planned production time that is truly productive, i.e. how much time do we have? Obviously there is a finite amount of time. How much of that time can we use to produce product, and is that product of a good quality such that it is usable? An OEE score of 100 obviously is the utopia, represents perfect production. Obviously only manufacturing good parts as fast as possible with no waste. An OEE score of 85 is deemed as being world class. And it's often the case when we engage with organisations that their expectation around their OEE score is much, much higher than reality. And it's not until you start to baseline and measure where you are on this scale can you truly understand whether the remedial measures you take within the organisation are having a significant impact on overall effectiveness. So Ryan.
Yeah, nice.
OEE.
Thank you, Paul. So yeah, we were going to go this a couple of different ways, but this is an interesting slide to kind of demonstrate really what OEE is when you break it down. Now, when you look at trying to demonstrate both internally and outwards into the business as to how to measure OEE, there can be done a few different ways. Typically, it's just a division through the different elements. But actually, I'd say to you, take a snapshot of this, because this is a really nice, easy way to identify exactly what OEE is and how that measurement actually plans out. So, and as visualization, it works really well as well. So you've got total operating time. We've all got the same amount of time in any given, within a year space. Then obviously, as we go into production, there'll be some planned maintenance. We need to take the machines offline to repair them, etc. Or there'll be times when we know they're not being used, and we know this ahead of time. Now beyond that, we get down to the operation, so we're full steam ahead, and we're pushing forward with the manufacturing lines. Something goes wrong, something potentially happens, and we suffer some downtime. So we take that into consideration too. So with that downtime, we started to make that product, and as it's being pushed out, we realised that actually now that we're producing a product, we're realising that we could potentially be producing that product too slowly, whether the machines are running slowly or there's some manual error that's causing that. We get a sort of further denomination of what we can actually produce. And then once we've actually produced the product, we realise that there's certain quality loss, certain wastage that we've produced in that process. So we finally get down to it. So utilising that, we can see that it's a simple calculation. And when you do this and you use a kind of a letter chart to identify this, I promise you, throughout the business is a really nice way of demonstrating exactly how that OEE measurement comes about. So for instance, your availability, you start off with that top level, operating time divided by planned production time. You take that measurement, then you use what's left, and you then work out the performance of those machines. Once you've done that, you take what's left and you work out what the quality is, and overall you get what's the OEE. Now, no doubt for a lot of you on the line, that's teaching you to suck eggs, but this as a demonstration is something you can take away today and actually use to demonstrate to those who aren't too familiar with how the OEE measurements comes about.
Great, thanks Ryan. So, why is OEE important? And as it really says on this slide here, it's understanding that potential. It's as we mentioned before, it's creating a baseline from which you can measure improvement, highlighting areas of loss, whether that's throughput, production downtime, lack of utilization based on various reasons, and ultimately it's about increasing revenue. So in the short term, OEE identifies the total opportunity for improvement, but in the longer term, OEE helps drive improvement through better understanding of things like losses. It also provides an objective way to set improvement targets and track progress towards reaching those targets. So why visualize OEE? Well, the same is true for any important metric within the business. Visualization is a great way of understanding context, understanding patterns and associations, outliers and trends, so we can really get a view on what those small percentile changes will actually mean in terms of ultimate output. But it also, done right, allows you to see problems early, to be more dynamic, to see where things need remedial action and take that action and then see immediately the result of those actions. But again, going back to what we mentioned before, it is people who are at the heart of this process. So visualizations and not simplifying, but making it very easy information very easy to consume allows individuals to become personally responsible and affect those changes as those align to their own roles within the business process.
Yeah, and it's actually worth, I mean, both you and I have worked on organisations where that OEE side, it varies wildly as to what they believe that OEE percentage is before we go in and do this. You know, you get some, as you said, overestimating what it could be. So that visualization element gives you a chance to really understand it. True.
So if we just look at, you know, what are the tools, what's the landscape, what's the sort of data platforms that are out there today to allow you to understand the sort of key metrics within the organisation. Obviously things like ERP or MES systems provide a level of information, but often the reporting from these systems are pre-built, they lack the ability to do customizations and drill down. There's not that ability to create you know, more advanced analytics or certainly collaborate around those analytics. They're relatively siloed. And obviously, because of that, the explosion of Excel reporting around the organisation, and obviously that helps small groups to take control of their own information. But again, that lacks the governance and control. Again, the ability to be truly customizable in these areas is questionable when it comes to bringing in larger data sets or doing more advanced analytics.
Yeah.
And often there's a high overhead, a high maintenance overhead in maintaining lots of different islands of information. Now obviously traditional reporting sort of grew out of that, and again that's great for asking those questions that come time and time again. You know, it's asking those, what did we do, in what quantities did we do it, what was effective, what wasn't. But it doesn't help us when we want to ask those next questions, those ancillary questions that naturally come when you start to interrogate and browse the data. And really that's where Qlik comes into play. So it's about this ability to have quick analysis, start at a very high level, start at a KPI or a simple set of KPIs that are aligned to the business or the process. Very intuitive to use and user-driven, and we'll see this in the application when Ryan takes us through this. Highly visual, again, visualization is great for context. You know, in the parlance of food, it's that first bite is with the eye. It enables you to focus down into what's really important. It gives that ability as well, or Qlik certainly gives you the ability to then collaborate, whether that's through shared sessions, annotations, data dialogues, or storytelling, to actually persuade people. This is what I've found. This is what my hypothesis is. This is what I believe we should do based on strong empirical information. And obviously it surfaces information from many different systems. It's often not just the case that it's from one system that we're trying to, you know, make these or gather these insights. So at this point we're going to go and have a look at a demonstration. So this is a simple example, and the example is really where we've been able to extract and model data from an MES application to visualize and analyze performance, and ultimately discover some of the reasons for poor performance and hypothesize about, you know, what actions should we take to improve performance, and you know, and as you would expect, to ultimately improve the OEE score. So over to you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, what we're looking at now is a Qlik OEE dashboard. So immediately what you can see is a really strong visualized idea of precisely where you are from a percentage perspective. The tab allows us to get an overview or a comparative relative to the time period as well. So as we can see, front and center, 69.8% is where our OEE stands today. But interestingly, it gives us a reflective review of where we were the week before. We were at 72.9%, so things have dropped down. An area of concern if this was something that you were looking at today. But it also gives us an indication of where we are across the different elements, both from availability and performance and quality. Now, I know from the questions I've had on calls with clients across the last few months is that one of the key requirements is to be able to not just have this at an exec level and a management level, but actually on the factory floor to be able to demonstrate back to those. And this is where you can take this top level dashboard and be able to put it onto a screen to give everyone the ability to see where they are. I know that Paul was discussing that importance of cultural change and driving everyone to take a personal responsibility in driving OEE forward. Well, this gives you that indication and the ability to do that there. But just on the numbers, we can start to drill down and see, okay, well, we've dropped. Why is that? So as we can see here, availability has dropped from 86 to 82. Okay, that's not a drop that I wanted to see. Performance, just a tiny drop. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. And quality, thankfully, is 100%. A lot of happy customers we can see there. So noticing that then it's availability, I know we had some planned maintenance, but this is a big drop for me. So I need to start looking and drilling into this in more detail. Now, it's worth explaining the colours on this as well. 69.8% is in red. For us, when we drop below 70%, that's a real area of concern for me, and it means I need to action it. 70 to 80%, well, that's a yellow for me because it's okay, but we want to improve and we want to get to that kind of 85% mark. However, obviously this differs from organisation to organisation, and it may differ from month to month if you know that production is going to be lower in some months. So within this application, we can change this really easily just to change the percentage that we're measuring up against. If you know you've got a low production month, you can change this so that the factory floor staff can see it and they can still hit that green. They're still motivated. So as we mentioned, availability is drilled down. So let's jump into downtime and start to understand a little bit more about why that is. So within this tab, it allows us to see total downtime and actually more importantly, a breakdown of that by category. So we can see that, okay, we've got machines that are idle, so they're just sitting there not doing a huge amount, and some that caused on the line issues with restraint, and there'll be some other subcategories in there as well, and then total machine failure. With each of these, we can jump down and we can start to see precisely why and jump into those categories independently. Okay, we've got waiting on a setup person in the idle, running in a different unscheduled maintenance, we're cleaning the machines. Okay, it all makes sense. And also within line restraint, we can jump into this category and start to see, okay, so we're changing different things, right, okay, it all makes sense and what was expected. Notice as well, as I jump in and out of data, I'm able to jump and choose things and move between the data quite seamlessly. It's also important to note as well that this is a top level view, but if I wanted to drill down into more specifics, such as there's different types of elements across my manufacturing line. Now, this will differ from organisation to organisation, but with this example, we've got forming, rolling, shaving and tapping. Simple clicks allow me to see the variances across them all. And as you can see from here, forming is a real area of concern for me because the average across the line is 41, but within forming it's 46.7. Now, I necessarily think that there's a larger volume of downtime, but my natural inquisitive human nature is to want to understand why that is. And I can examine other factors that might be potentially associated with this, you know, for instance, how has this performed over time? And we can see that by jumping down into this and seeing, okay, well, we were performing, there's 800 hours of downtime, but actually over the course of time, we've reduced it. So what else could be causing this issue? And that gives us an indication to say, did anything change? You know, all these questions are firing in my mind now. What's going on with this? So to drill down into this even further, let's jump to an overview tab. Right, okay. So now I can start to see in more detail. Interestingly, the selections I made carried with me across the dashboard, so I'm not having to reselect data. It knows where I want to select and it moves with me with that. Again, just on forming, I can start to see this in more granular detail. Availability down from 88 to 77, that's a big hit. Performance, similar to across the board, just a tiny % drop, and obviously quality, we're still keeping those customers happy. So looking at this, we can see again, as mentioned, it's dropped by 10%. Now, was this an issue on one day? Is this something that I need to be concerned about with forming, that this is going to continue throughout the year? Is there something we can make an impact on? So what we can do is jump down, and we've created a weekly trend punch card. This gives us an indication of OEE at a day level. And that, for me, allows me to see, right, okay, well, how are we performing? Is there any hotspots? Moving across, okay, I knew that on week 19 we had a downtime, we weren't actually operating that day. No, I understand that. And going across, and obviously you know how your manufacturing floor operates, so you can start to spot the trend. But in the last couple of weeks here, this is something I wasn't expecting. OEE's dropped to sort of 75%, and actually has continued to decline straight into the red. It's not what I wanted to see, so I can immediately click and start to drill down into that further. As the data reflects and changes to my selections, I can see here, right, okay, 2 of my machines are the culprits here. We can see that cold former 382 and 381 across morning and afternoon shifts have either been failing or have had line restraint issues. Now for me, immediately, that was 5 minutes of clicking. Natural inquisitive nature led me to an exact issue that I can now fix. For instance, I may look at this and go, right, well, these 2 machines either need to be retired, I need to replace them, or I need to look at maybe shifting some of the work over to the other cold former machines that I have. It's that simple ability to be able to say, to find out the reasons why something's going wrong and action it immediately. So finally, I may look at this and actually, this wasn't my initial question, but as we mentioned before, it just has me perked my interest that I'm seeing a lot of morning and afternoon issues here, and I'm curious just to find out, is there a potentially correlation between morning and afternoon when the issues that I'm facing? Well, I don't want to see weeks because potentially it could be across the board. So I'm looking at shifts and I want to see, well, you know, is it machine failure? Is it actually potentially some of the people we have working at those times? So we can see here, okay, there's something interesting going on. So in the afternoons, we're seeing a larger volume of downtime on the availability than in the mornings. Again, why is this? I'm going to go and speak to those shift managers and understand that in more detail. You see, this is the whole purpose of this. It's having those questions that fire off in your mind and being able to jump and answer them as need be. So that gives you a kind of overview and a sort of taster as to exactly what you can expect when you're looking at visualizing this through a dashboard and a Qlik method.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. We're just going to jump back into the slides. So, you know, I think that was a really good example there, and it's a very sort of, should I say, sort of basic example of how you can go through that process of discovery, understanding from a high level, drilling into the different dimensions which are making up the overall result, and then coming up with ideas and formulating actions that you may want to take based on the information that you're seeing. So we've had a look at Qlik and how we can sort of measure OEE to help drive performance, but the concepts and processes are also true across the entire supply chain and certainly across your business processes. And it may well be that OEE isn't perhaps the current priority. It may be in other areas such as delivery, procurement, or even sourcing. But the concepts are true across all those areas of your business, and these are areas where Qlik, you know, really is seeing, you know, delivery of benefit to our customers and value. It's exposing that information and delivering it in a way that's very meaningful. So it's sort of a bit of a summary really. So it's visual analytics. It's at the point of decision. It's making sure that individuals that are tied to the business process have on hand the right information at the right time to make an informed and trusted, governed decision. So it's accessing that information across those multiple sources, but also bringing work groups together so they can really understand and discuss and collaborate about what we should be doing. So if we just touch on a few different areas here, I mean, as you can see, we've worked with many different organisations across many different types of manufacturers, and we've worked in these different sort of business processes, and this is really from, you know, some medium-sized organisations right the way through to some very large enterprises. And one particular example that we were keen to pull out is with Alkor Draka, who are a French and Italian-based organisation that produce PVC films. Now, you know, the benefits here, I mean, they implemented Qlik. they got the overall benefits that they were looking for in terms of reducing downtime through better management of the processes, but also seeing the information in a much more real-time way. Not having to wait till the end of a production line or the end of the day to see what happened. If you're able to pull this information from those MES systems in more real time, then you're able to make those kind of remedial changes much quicker. Now, Rene, who was the IT manager there, didn't want this just to be the preserve of the managers. So this was pushed out, across shift leaders, across technical services managers, etc. So again, this goes back to many different people being aligned to the business process and giving them applications and insight into data, which allow them to be much more able to make autonomous decisions. But also on top of that, just some really basic savings around, time taken, man hours taken to collate this information by automating this. Obviously, there's a lot of savings to be had. So that sort of concludes the more sort of formal part of the webinar. And we're pretty much on time, and we've got a few minutes before the end. Like I say, the purpose was to be quite brief and to the point on this particular webinar. So we just wanted to open it up. There is a Q&A panel within the application on which you're viewing this. So if anyone's got any questions, would be delighted to take any of those right now. Okay, so we've got a question. So how easy is it to set up these dashboards?
Yeah, no, good question. And really, it's pretty simple, to be honest. Comparative to what you've been used to, obviously, there's a level of complexity in making sure that it's tied to how your business is working. And there'll always be a set of circumstances where we'd make sure that we understand precisely what your floor is looking for. So with Alkor, one of their key requirements was to make sure that it was simple and intuitive visually for everybody across the business to use. But to actually set up this kind of dashboard takes 2 to 3 days. And obviously, depending on your technical capability, we work with the likes of partners who can come in and assist you and get you up to speed very quickly. And for a large scale, weeks and can potentially take weeks, but it really, yeah, I mean, that's the maximum. You're not looking at, when people look at ERP, they're looking at sort of 18 months, if not longer. This really is a kind of a weeks, maximum weeks to set things up.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. We've got a couple of questions coming in, but we're just at the point of
minute silence. Yeah.
Minute silence. So we're just going to stay on the line, and as I say, we're welcome you to join us, and then we'll carry on at a minute past, 31 minutes past. Great. Thanks, everyone. So we've had a couple of questions come in around sort of commercials around Qlik.
Yep.
So yeah, happy to take those. I mean, all our sort of pricing, etc., is in the public domain. We've got a price list, of course, and depending on use cases, the sort of setup requirements, etc., then we're happy to sort of talk to you individually.
Sure. I think we obviously, the questions coming through, we can see the individuals are. So we'll take those following this call. We're happy to organise those calls and go through it in more detail for you.
Okay, great. And then how do you connect to sort of MES data? What's the sort of connection protocols?
Yeah, so I mean, without trying to go too technical with this, we have specific APIs to connect to certain databases, and traditionally we can use ODBC connections and OLEDB connections. With anything like this, we'll take time just to understand precisely what systems you're using, and we'll be able to connect. There really isn't data sources we can't connect to in some respects.
Relational data sources. I mean, we connect the way that Qlik works. It connects into the underlying data. Yep. The more granularity we can get, the better. We set reload schedules to take incremental loads and changes, which allows us to get that more real-time view of the data. It's an in-memory technology, so we create the data model, which is then loaded into memory. So unlike perhaps sort of OLAP sources, we're not doing pre-aggregation of the data. Data is associated, brought into memory, and then when users are making those selections, they're seeing the flexing happening in real time. So connectivity, database connectivity at the core, and pulling that into an in-memory data model.
We just had another a question that I've had to come up a few times before this as well. So the question is, can we do this for mobile as they have people on the factory floor using tablets now? Firstly, well done for modernising to that level. It's always nice to see. But absolutely. So utilising Qlik Sense, it's effectively a build once, use anywhere solution. So once you've built that, it automatically scales for whatever device you're using. So it will reflect the device if you're using a phone, if you're using a tablet. It will make best use of the screen real estate, and also will have all of the pinch pull features that you'd expect with tablets.
Yeah, and just adding to that as well, I mean, the way that Qlik works, again, it's a browser-based technology. So we use HTML5 as the sort of protocol in terms of rendering the Qlik dashboard. So as long as there's connectivity through the corporate network, obviously for governance and security, etc., users can pick up their Qlik dashboards on any device. And obviously using HTML5 in a browser approach, then it means that opens up to support for many more different mobile devices, be that Android, iOS, Windows, etc.
Yeah.
So it's very much, mobility is very much at the core of Qlik.
Perfect.
Okay, and then one final question, scalability. How much data can you pull into Qlik? Well, Qlik uses its own sort of patented compression techniques. So we compress data down by about 90%, depending on the uniqueness of the records, by about 90%, and that's loaded into memory. There are white papers that we can share. Again, we can see the individuals that are asking this question, but we see almost linear scalability with Qlik, whether that's scaling up, adding extra resources like memory and processor behind the application, or scaling out, adding additional servers, clusters, etc. So the scalability is absolutely there. One of the customers we work with, Expedia, uses Qlik and pulls in billions of rows of data and analyzes, millions of rows. So, certainly the scalability is there when you've got large volumes of transactions and you want to look back at those transactions over a long period of time.
And I just want to answer one final question, and just having to try and think how to read it without standing politically correct. But the question effectively asks, for those who aren't technically competent, is this a system that they can be trained to use? So effectively, yes. If I just take this as more of a training question, so we provide full training, both on-site at your facilities, to get everybody up to speed, and then obviously providing a train-the-trainer solution so that everyone knows how to use. We really appreciate the fact that making sure that everyone knows how to get the best use will ensure that your investment in this is a real long-term investment and you get the most from it. So absolutely, education and training are at the forefront of when we provide this, and we can sort of work with you on that, both from the Qlik perspective and obviously the partner perspective as well, to provide some really solid.
Yeah, and it's about designing the applications with the user in mind. It's making sure that they're simple to use, that they're intuitive, that there's a natural logical flow through the applications from high-level KPIs down into the different dimensions, so people really can just explore and understand. As you saw from the demonstration that Ryan went through, it really is a case of, you know, clicking, selecting, moving, flexing through the application. So a very intuitive tool. We do provide user training. We've got online modules that you can embed into your intranet sites, for example, for employees who want to start using the tool. But as I say, it's a very fast learning curve because it doesn't require, certainly from a user perspective, you know, the need of scripts or advanced Excel type functions. It really is a case of clicking, selecting to see the results of the analysis. So
you wanted to see downtime on the app, you naturally click downtime. You don't really need training for that. You just think, I want to see downtime, I click downtime. So yeah, all about design, and we'll work with you on that. But yeah, brilliant.
Okay, well look, I think that does conclude the session this morning. So really do thank your attendance and the questions that came through at the end. We've got a final slide just on some additional resources. We will send the materials out. The webinar will be followed up with a survey follow-up email, the ability to pick up additional resources. There's a white paper actually that's really good.
Yeah, so there's a part on the screen at the bottom right on one of the widgets where you can actually click it and it will allow you to download a PDF that has some additional information that I strongly suggest you do. And also, as Paul's mentioned, jump onto the web and go to our solutions where you can start to drill down into the specific area of your business and get even more resources on that. And of course, as we've seen some questions come through, absolutely you can reach out to us after this call and we can schedule some time to go into more specific detail around what you're doing today and look towards building something that works for you.
Right, okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers. Bye-bye.